All right, welcome back to New Comic Book Day Night Live. We are live in YouTube, on CKRS, and everywhere your eyes can digest it. We are here with co-hosts Manny Gomez and Rick Lopez. I am Eli Schwab, and we are joined by our super special guest, Andrew MacLean. What's up, guys? What's up, everyone?
Hey. Chilling.
All right. Hell yeah. All right, so real quick, we're going to do a quick rundown of what we've been up to, what's going on. It's New Comic Book Day. Give us a book you got, and then we'll dive deep into the questions. And if you didn't get a book, tell us what you're working on. All right, go for it, Manny.
All right, well, I actually had to hit the shop for the first time in a couple of weeks, so I got a fat stack. A lot of stuff has come out. I've been really digging the Holy Roller. I don't know if anyone's been reading that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun. Rick Remender, co-written by Andy Samberg. It's about a Nazi fighting bowling superhero. so if that sounds good. Ghost Machine, which has all the creator-owned stuff that Jeff Johns and a bunch of people are doing and putting together. Me and Michael were talking about it earlier. So there's a lot of good stuff there. Just, quick stops, Kevin Smith's comic, a lot of stuff, man. It's been a
day, Night Live.
So I don't know what that was, but a lot of stuff has come out.
Sorry.
That's good. 2024 has started pretty strong with a lot of great comic releases. So I picked that up. And as far as what I've been working on, Adam Lemna and I I've just finished the second draft of the script for Relic Hunter issue 2. So we're going to send that off for editing, and, Adam's going to get down to drawing it. So, hopefully that issue will be out sometime soon this year. I think Adam wanted to aim for Heroes Con, so that's, I guess, that's our deadline right there. And of course, we're all getting ready to go to IC3 on March 9th. That's the, the big indie creator con that Matt Sardo over at Monkeys Fighting Robots put on. So, we're organizing panels and, getting groups together to carpool and get there. So, yeah, 2024 is starting off strong, man. I'm excited. How about you guys? What do you guys got going on?
Hell yeah. Go for it, Rick. What you working on, bud?
Hey guys, thanks for coming on, Andrew. So I'm still grinding on Cosmic Cat. I do a page of that every other Sunday. I'm just getting some ready for the next drop. We're already, after this next drop, we'll be into the 4th year of Next Panel Press. There's over a dozen different artists on there. You can read all their stories and the story highlights and catch up with them over the last 4 years. 100% Comics put out Batman Year One, and so there's a bunch of us that every different page is some different artists that went through Batman Year One and did their own different rendition of the pages. 100% Comics has that. I have pages in the colored version, but the black and white version has a different artist in there too. And then, as always, I'm pushing the power. Right now, I'm trying to finish a Cosmic Cat book, but after that, I'm going to put out the 4th and final issue of The Power. This one's about a boy creating a comic, only to discover a realm beyond space and time within his own mind. It's a lot of playing with the medium, a lot of psychedelic imagery, sacred geometry, and the like. But that's my baby. So get ready for the 4th issue coming soon this year, and see me at IC3 on March 9th.
Hell yeah. IC3 is going to be insane.
Yeah,
it's going to be good, man. I have not been to the comic book store for a week or two, but I'm still pushing this bad boy, Devil by the Deed Masters Edition. You guys got to get on this thing. It's insane. If you're a Matt Wagner fan, if you're a fan of Grendel, which I am, and you should just read this and check it out. A lot of people will say, oh, it's hard to get into Grendel. I don't know where to start. And you want me to start at this one with all these paragraphs and no thought bubbles? Well, this is where you should go. He's broke it up. He's made it 3 times as long, more beautiful, and more epic than ever. So check that out. And of course, Cosmic Lion Productions is always cranking out new books. We've got Frankie Boy Monster by your boy sitting right over here, Morgan Herron, the college age Wunderkind. And then, of course, Ghost Agents is always ripping along. Ghost Agents Metropolis is about to go to print. And we've got
nice
there from Adam, from Rick, a full story from Rick, which we're super psyched on.
Hell yeah.
And, I guess since we don't have a ton more people, we'll go around And just drop one book and what you're working on, and keep it quick so we can go here and start the interviews. All right, so let's go over to Morgan. What you reading, bro? And what you
I've been reading a lot of comics through the mail, like Snarlagon by our amazing guest.
There we go. Plugs.
And Clive Danger by Marty Keene, I mean, he's been putting out comics that I've been buying for like pretty much almost on a monthly basis. So good stuff from him.
Yeah, he's the man. And of course, you can get Morgan's book, Frankie Boy Monster, from CosmicLionProductions.com.
Yeah, working on issue 2 right now.
Is happening at all times. What about you, Mitch? What you been reading?
Well, I just got the Zoop reprint of Tony Harris and B. Claymore's Whistling Skull.
Well,
I know this book had a history of like having gone from Wildstorm, then Wildstorm closed, then it took a few years until that book came in, and basically they got the rights back. They had to change colors to like maybe 2 DC characters that appear at the very end. It's kind of weird. It's like Tony's style has really changed, and it's almost like Tony Salmon's style almost. And it's ironic because Tony Salmon's worked with James Robinson, was the guy who did Starman with Tony, and it's like it feels like a really good superhero-esque story without the DC element. It feels like it could be an Image book and anything else. But you know, I really enjoyed that book when it first came out. I was really glad they got the rights and, you know, give it a nice hardcover reprint. And you know, I'll say right now, Tony's one of my favorite artists since I was a little kid, and I even had him do a Starman when I went to Terrificon. That was like a revision idea.
Nice, dude. Heck yeah, thanks, Mitch. All right, we got Anthony over there, another amazing artist. You have a new book out, or you did have a new book out, right?
I working on a new book called Nut Jobs. It's these 3 little nuts. It's in a house. They're in a house. They're fighting off other nasty food that they're wreaking havoc, trying to do stuff. It's just total silliness. Actually, I gave Andrew a few of my books in New York, so hope you liked them. Nice. And then I'm reading, I just bought this, I didn't dip into it yet, Dead Lawyers and Other Pleasant Thoughts. If anybody knows Wiley, the author of Non Sequitur, the comic strip,
yeah,
he did a bunch of like random comics, and that's one of them. So that book's like 30 years old, but I just found it. Very excited to dive into it.
Nice, dude. I love the Non Sequitur is fun. You know, it follows in that
So
line,
good.
Our Side, of course, and
Yeah,
super fun, single panels.
Yep.
Really gets your mind into a twist, trying to figure it out. I love that.
So good too. The art is just ridiculous, and it's like I don't know what he actually uses, but it looks like it's just like a ballpoint pen or like whatever pen was on the, like if you went into office and just like I'm taking this, or like the bank just took the pen
that's
and
it. That's all he does.
Just crazy. Yeah, he's so good.
Hell yeah. All right, dude. Adam Limna just joined us. What you up to, brother? What you working on? What you reading?
Well, I mean, I think Manny covered it pretty well. Right now I'm doing a lot of reading of this bad boy right here. And applying it to Relic Hunter 2. This is my book, Relic Hunter. Relic Hunter 2 is bigger. It's a huge story. It took a little bit of time to crack the nut of the story, but feeling good about that. Working with some really talented folks on layouts, and just finished the cover for a poetry book. So stoked, man.
Oh yeah.
You got to show off that cover, Adam. It's beautiful.
I'll put it in the I'll throw it in the chats so you guys can see it.
Awesome.
Sweet. All right, so that brings us to Andrew. You want to share anything that you've been reading or anything that you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. I've been reading. I just started reading for a novel, Gregor the Overlander. It's kind of like, I guess, like the Lord of the Rings if like Neil Gaiman wrote it or something. It's like the overworld and this fantasy world underground. It's pretty good. It's pretty fun. But for comics, I'm reading about halfway through Tradmore's Doctor Strange book, Fall Sunrise, which is, of course, some of the best art I've seen in
Yes.
a while. It's really insane. It's such a monumental piece of effort to see what he's
Did you
done.
get the treasury size?
Yeah, I
book?
got the big one. Yeah, I had to
Yeah.
put it up next to my Silver Surfer Black. The big one. Bookshelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah. All right, sweet. Now that we all know what to pick up next, let's dive into the interview and let's talk to Andrew. We're going to start with host Manny Gomez. What you got, man? What's going on?
All right, it's gonna be a pretty basic question, man, because I've never had the pleasure of speaking to you or meeting you before. So like, why comics? How did you get into comics? Has it been like a lifelong thing for you? Was it something you discovered later on in life? Like, what's your comic book origin? If you were gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a lifelong thing for me. I remember being interested in drawing and artwork from a very young age, and I loved, superheroes from a very young age. And I felt like, I learned to draw just by, copying panels, But I don't really remember a time where I didn't draw. I don't remember a time where I wasn't trying to kind of like draw comic book characters. It's just been a lifelong thing for sure.
And did you have a favorite book growing up, or like one that made you realize that that's what you wanted to do? Like, I guess that's also my question. When did you realize that comics was what you wanted to do?
When I was pretty young, I'd say, as soon as I was like old enough to start thinking outside of the box of like professional baseball player or like policeman. I think the first
Cowboy
thing
or whatever.
yeah. I was like, well, somebody's gonna draw these things. I love them. So when I was really young, I loved Spider-Man, and I would pore over the panels and try to figure out, every little tiny detail, and try to decide, oh, when do they omit drawing the webs? Which of these, if there's like a repeated panel or something, I was like, oh, did they trace it? I was just obsessed with like poring over those things and trying to figure out how it was made. Like there was like a code on the page in front of me or something. But later on, I think what really got me, a particular book that got me really excited about what comics could be, was Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. on Daredevil Man Without Fear. It was
Fuck
really,
yeah, man.
it was super violent. It was like a superhero not wearing a superhero costume. I still use a lot of those like special effects. I feel like a machine
Wasn't
gun.
he wearing Adidas?
Yeah, he's wearing like Adidas, exactly. Like
Yeah.
the idea that he's like that a superhero could be so cool and just wear like a sweatsuit really blew my mind. And I'd never seen blood before. Like it was a really bloody comic. Like I don't know, I just thought it was so badass. It really made me go like, shit, these things can be, something else.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I revisited that not long ago, and it still holds up.
Really
Still. That's all I
Word.
got for now. I got some more questions for later.
All right, cool. We're going to go over to Rick Lopez, the man. What's up, dude?
What's up, dude? Thanks for coming on again, Andrew. Good to see you again, dude. Love your work. As long as I've known about you, like with Head Lopper, that's where I first heard about you. You've been a known quantity. You've been a known quantity. I've been really curious, like what comes before that. What gets you to that point? Because like I'm saying, like the first time I've seen you, you're fully formed. You're Andrew MacLean already. So I'm like, you know what I mean?
I drew my whole life, but I didn't really start thinking about what my style would be until I was kind of like, I don't know, maybe like mid to late 20s or so, when I started to be like, oh, if I want to do this, if I want to make this my job, I've got to get really serious about it and just kind of figure this all out. But around that time, I was started to try to meet as many people who wanted to do the same thing, and I did a handful of pitches for for a handful of writers, and drew a couple things for writers that were self-publishing the books and things. So I probably drew seven, maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 7 comics or so before I was like published. And so there's a lot of trial and error in there to just get started. And it was always, but it was like a little progress at a time. So it was like, oh, I'd send in a pitch, and if I got a response, it'd be like, oh, we like the story, but not the art. Send in another one, oh, we like the art, but not the story, kind of thing. And slowly but surely, each one of these projects, I'm pitching it. And I'm getting like more and more of a response from publishers. And eventually I started to get to know some editors at Dark Horse, just from sending them so much stuff. And I self-published HEAD LOPPER because I was sick of all these things that I'd been making. There were pitches that were just failed, that I never had, and I never had anything to show for it. So I self-published the first very beginning of HEAD LOPPER, and it helped me get me like anthology work at Dark Horse. And then after that I did Apocalyptic Girl with them. So it was just like, it was
Grind.
yeah, exactly. And it was just a nonstop, just keep doing it, and do whatever, take whatever road I can imagine. But through that whole process, I was getting just tons and tons of practice. I was really making sure that I wasn't like, phoning it in, that I was like really, all the things that were really hard for me to draw, I was really trying to make sure that I was spending time on learning to draw those things better. But to me, it's very linear. It's not like a,
Yeah, of course. Was it so with like your style? I mean, when I see it, I know it's you. Has it always been at least like comparable in that sense, or did you have like more of a house style at first, and maybe this kind of evolved out of that, or is it you just drawn the way you've drawn and gotten better at it?
No, I've drawn a lot of tons of different ways, I feel like, over my life, and I didn't really try to figure out what was like what I wanted to do until I was much older. So it wasn't like, if you talk to James Herron, he would say that that's just the way he draws and always
Right.
has, but I felt like I was actively taking inspiration from places that inspired me. But I was also like, when I first started to make headway and get some work, I was so self-conscious of how much like Mignola influence I had in it, because before I was like trying to work professionally, it was just like I was just having fun. So today I'll draw like Mignola, today I'll try to draw house style. But honestly, all my attempts at drawing kind of house style stuff was like also really bad. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
pull it off. Like I didn't have the chops, for all that rendering and everything. And I just thought that my drawings looked better in their kind of preliminary stages. So for me, a part of helping me, figure out how I wanted to draw was to subtract things. Like there was a lot of mark making that I was doing, trying to emulate things that I really couldn't. And so eventually I was like, you know what, these drawings are better if I just draw less, if I just subtract. But I still feel like my style is always changing based on whatever
Absolutely.
whatever I'm currently into.
Project.
Or just sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't think I do this thing very well. I'm gonna really focus on getting better at it, and then I'll feel my style shift and incorporate those things more and more.
Yeah, like I love HEAD LOPPER. I love your style in there, but like Snarlagon, you really like I love what you're doing with this one. You really like escalated even further, in my opinion. And you blew my mind. I love this book so much.
Thanks. It was kind of an experiment. I also used different tools than I
Yeah.
normally did. So like I ink all of HEAD LOPPER with a brush, and usually a mix of like microns and stuff. But on Snarlagon, I inked with a nib, and then did like layers of like gouache as kind of like almost like ink wash, in shades of gray or whatever. So I drew on different paper on it. I just like to experiment. So I used like watercolor paper, so it would have more texture and everything.
Yes.
So I still feel like it's kind of my shape language, but I shifted a lot of the ways I approach
Yeah,
it.
shape language. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I just think it's fun to change your tools or try to express, say gray tones in
Yeah, a
different
lot
ways.
of that stippling too. I really like that a lot. You've been crushing that shit.
Thanks. I wasn't planning on doing all that, but it just felt like with him having like a reptile skin, like a
No,
texture
totally.
on it would work really nicely. And so
Right.
yeah, you can do that.
No, for sure, dude. I'll pass you on to the next one. I could ask you a million questions. Thank you, Andrew.
You're muted, Eli.
I'm muted. Thanks, Rick. Sorry, my cat was trying to ask a bunch of questions, and I said, "Wait, your turn, bud." All right. So, my question is, whenever I see you at a con or whenever I've seen you, you always got the toys. I read, on your website when I was getting ready for this that you have like a clothing line too. Laser Wolf Attack is where art and apparel meet the street. So, what was it like taking your just like comics and art to like the next level of like merchandising, as Spaceballs so perfectly put it? So what is it? What was that journey like? And speak to like how you moved from the page to like real life stuff.
I
Good
think
luck.
for me, like I also in high school and stuff, I was in bands and everything, and so we were always, making our own, recording our own CDs, selling our own stuff, coming up with, it's always DIY, right? In art when you're figuring it out. And so to me, it just like making anything kind of just felt very natural. And so like I started to make comics, but I guess I didn't think about it much, really. I was just like, oh, I can make some other things. If I've got ideas for something and it's exciting enough, I really want to try to do it. And so, it was doing Laser Wolf Attack and toys and clothing and everything. It's one of those things. It's like, hey, I've got some ideas for it. Let's just give it a try.
Yeah. It
And
just came as natural as the page.
yeah, exactly. Like still just art, really, to do t-shirt designs or something. It's all kind of the same. But
And what about the toys? The toys are so cool. Your designs are like so beefy and bulky and perfect for those like vinyl toys, So what was the
yeah,
process in that?
when we did a Norgal toy, a HEAD LOPPER toy with Skeleton Crew Studios, and I did all the drawings and saw all the photos and everything, but when I finally held it in my hands and felt how beefy it was, it felt like holding a football. I was like, oh, I thought I created an action figure. And you hold it like this, but yeah, it's also just one of those things too, where I remember getting some advice. So I think when I was in college that, to work, to be self-employed, to be an artist as your job, you should, the analogy would be you should light many fires. So instead of like same idea of don't put your eggs all in one basket. So it's to say, don't put all your logs on one fire and think that that's gonna keep you warm, because then if that job, that gig, or whatever, that fire runs out, then you're out in the cold. But if you are able to light several small fires and kind of have several gigs at the same time, different like sources of revenue or whatever, you might and one fire goes out, you've still got other ways to make money or whatever. And so that was always, I've always thought of that too, is like, how do you, we love making comics and everything and we're artists, but how do you make it, a job? How do you make it a business?
Yeah.
So, I'm always trying to juggle what's fun to make and what, might keep us afloat too.
Yeah. And once you diversify that stuff, then you're hitting all these other markets too. And like, the comic book market is like, $5 to $10 a piece, for like a comic. But once you get into collectible toys, then it's like, a couple $100 a pop or whatever. And so once you start building up that price point, a whole different
Right.
world.
Yeah, true. I would say overall for me, I think the toy market is harder than comics, just because you can think of how small the comic book, industry is compared to other industries, television, anything. And toys, like, collectible toys feels even smaller to me. So it's like, that's an uphill battle all of its own.
Yeah, and I mean, there's only really one. I mean, there's so many Comic Cons around the world and US that you can, go to, but there really is only Designer Con that's like the toy market.
Kinda, yeah. There are others, but Designer Con is
Big one.
far and away the biggest and best that I've seen.
It's very sick. All right, cool. We're gonna do one more round through the hosts. Let's get a quick rapid fire question here we got from the chat on NCKRS on Facebook. Raymar Brunson asked, "Who is your biggest inspiration?" And then we'll go back to Manny.
My biggest, I mean, it depends on when in my life you would ask me that question, but for the last handful of years, probably Hayao Miyazaki. I mean, I always loved his movies, but then I read the Nausicaa manga, and it just really, blew me away in terms of both drawing and storytelling. And there's so much tone and detail, and it's so lush and beautiful. I just don't get over it. Like he's got a way, as we all know, of making things both like, bizarre and haunting and yet endearing at the same time. And that balance of the weird and strange and scary and beautiful is something that he just kind of naturally kind of balances between art and story. And I don't get sick of it at all.
Hell yeah. Great answer. All right, back to Manny.
All right, I wanted to ask you a question about writing, because I know you've been writing some Godzilla comics. Godzilla's kind of having a renaissance right now, which is great, because I've loved him since I was a kid, which I'm guessing you did too,
Yeah.
But Godzilla strikes me as a difficult project to write for comics, because it's so cinematic. Like what did you find any challenges in writing like a Godzilla comic book? I mean, because we're used to seeing him on the big screen, larger than life.
Sure.
You're talking about putting kaiju in like
A box.
comic book that you hold in your hands. Yeah, exactly. So like, how did you approach that? Like, how did you approach? Because to me, that would be very, very hard and challenging. It seems, scary.
I think that kaiju stories in general are kind of challenging. I think the reason is like we're all there to see the big monsters, not the humans. And how do you and the monsters don't talk? So I think the big challenge.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big challenge is how do you link a giant monster story to a human story and have them not just be two parallel stories, but one story together? How do you have the humans, interact, and how do you make it so what the humans do even matters at all to a giant monster fight? Like you could argue, do these kaiju even though they are humans, having a story at their feet. And so I do think that's the real challenge. And so I addressed that in my Godzilla story in two ways. I wanted to do it physically. I wanted to have it be so that the humans can stand and fight right alongside Godzilla. But I wanted it to be a little deeper. So I was like, just asked myself, like, all right, what's a universal theme that humans share with animals? Thinking of if kaiju were real, we wouldn't even call them monsters, they would just be animals, right? So
Yeah, good fun.
So what do we share? And the most universal truth for me, I thought, was to have kids, to have family. And I was thinking about Godzilla, son of Godzilla, and Mania, and all, and these like these characters and stuff. And so I thought that if I could tell a story that kind of sets Godzilla up as kind of a parental figure, as well as have a parental figure paralleling the Godzilla story in the humans, thematically you could be there. And so like so in it we use the robot Mogera, and I create these scientist characters, and I wanted to use the scientist characters kind of as like tokusatsu pilots. So think like Voltron pilots, or like
nice.
or like
Super Sentai.
Mogera, I think of like Megazord, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's what we did. So I have this, so I use Mogera to take these human characters so they can fight alongside Godzilla while simultaneously paralleling this kind of like this mother-daughter relationship with like Godzilla and Mania. And I don't know, not to I think it works pretty well. It's it's one of those things where you can find the human story really boring, sometimes in Godzilla movies or kaiju movies or whatever. But in ours, it's using Mogera as like the way to make the human characters physically bigger in a way is really exciting. And they let us have fun with Mogera. We turn into like Super Mogera, where like Mogera has like a chainsaw arm and then like another bladed arm. He's got these like rocket launchers and everything over the shoulders. Um, and that way, like I said, Megazord style, these human characters can stand and fight right alongside.
And another quick follow up is like, I mean, how much like communicate? I mean, obviously, IDW is a publisher, but how much communication do you have with Toho Studios, and like, do you communicate directly with them?
No, we usually communicate through the IDW editor, whoever's on the Godzilla project. And they are one of the challenges of writing for Godzilla because they have some rules that you might not expect.
Yeah, that was my next question. Was like, what kind of rules? Because you're working on a licensed property, like
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
probably limited.
Yeah. And one of the biggest rules, but I would say that they were pretty lenient on it, was that you can't say what the kaiju like want. You can't say what
Interesting.
what they think. You can't say what they feel. Their like motivations should be kind of ambiguous. They think of them as like, say, a force of nature. Like think of kaiju as like a storm. You know what I mean? But then if you're trying to write for these characters, you kind of need to motivate them.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to figure out how do I motivate how do I get these characters to want to do things if I can't really say what they want? And I think one of the and I was surprised they let me get away with it, but one of the fun things I think we did in our Godzilla comic is that becomes kind of a conversation. There's these two characters that, butt heads. And one of them, our main character, she thinks that, Godzilla is basically a force of good. Um, because Godzilla saved her when she was a child. And this other character, he's actually the inventor of Mogera. He absolutely thinks that's not true. He thinks Godzilla is like a monster. And so, we're not really allowed to say what these characters, what they want, what their motivations are. But I was able to at least have characters have that conversation, which was fun. And be like, well, what do they want? And one of them's like, we got to kill Godzilla. The other one's like, we need his, we can't do this without him. And so that becomes a through line, kind of trying to attach our humans to the monsters as well.
Cool, man. Thank you, man. Yeah.
Pleasure.
Super interesting. That's so
yeah.
Cool. What a challenge. What a fun challenge that must have
Yeah, it was
exactly.
fun.
Yeah,
it was really fun.
What a puzzle to try and put together,
It was. And like the original pitch was I thought this was far-fetched, but I was like, whatever, they can say no, I didn't want to use I wanted to take Mechagodzilla and break Mechagodzilla into machines and vehicles and just like reinvent what Mechagodzilla can do.
I mean,
that's
like, awesome.
Yeah, that was really fun. But they were like, no, but you know what? And then they're like, use Mogera. Nobody uses Mogera, and Mogera already breaks up into little vehicles and stuff. And then they let me add extra vehicles, so it ends up being like a 5-vehicle robot, which is not very Godzilla-ish, but really fun to stick it in there.
Sick. All right, sweet. Let's go back over to Rick, and I'll do one more, and then we'll go to the audience cues.
All right, it's not quite kaiju fun, but I always try to ask, like, just for my own self, really, do you have yourself on any kind of schedule when you're working, and what do you like? I ask a million people, hoping that I can glom something out of it, but most people just seem to do the same thing I do. So, do you have any kind of schedule at all, or do you just kind of run yourself into the ground until you just lay down eventually?
No, I do find schedules are helpful, like routine, and it's not always what I necessarily want it to be, but I'll notice patterns like, oh, if I do this or whatever, I could squeeze an extra hour out of a day or something. Um, but so yeah, I generally work. I notice that I'm happier if I work kind of a regular person schedule. Like I'd shoot for something close to 9 to 5. You know, you honestly, it's usually more like 10 to 7:30. That's kind of my like standard work day. Um, but if I want to finish something by a certain date, like a certain deadline or whatever, it is best for me to hit those things if I actually track it from the deadline. I mean, and be like, all right, I have to complete, 3 pages a week or something. And you can figure this out if you're an artist. It is really, really helpful. Just know how fast you can draw a page. So I can draw a page, in say 12 hours or so, pencils through inks. So really that equates to about like a day and a half per page. So if I want to hit a deadline, whether it's self-imposed or not, self-imposed deadlines are good too. Like I'll need to track it back and be like, all right, I can do, 2.5 pages a week or something, and then actually just map it out on a calendar and just say like, all right, this day, drawn page 6. Tomorrow is 6 in the beginning of 7. Like if I do that and track it, I'm much more likely to get something done, at on time.
No, that's perfect, dude. It's pretty much what I was hoping for something because a lot of times when I ask, I don't really. That's the most advanced answer I've gotten for that one so far.
Well, I have an extremely efficient wife. My wife is like like
Oh yeah.
like she's all schedules and all Microsoft Excel and everything. So like it's her brain. She's just like, obviously just schedule it. And I'm like, no, you're right. That's the only
Yeah,
way.
she's always super helpful at the tables and stuff too.
Oh
I
yeah.
figured like she's got to be helping you so much.
Yeah, it's a huge help. I mean, she's the one that'll be like, hey, your pages aren't really, 10 hours anymore. They're more like 12-hour pages. I was like, oh shit, all right. I gotta either like schedule more time or draw faster.
Right. No, that's legit, man. Yeah, you two are awesome. But I'll let the crowd take you now. So thank you again, Andrew. Appreciate you.
All right, word. I'm gonna do a question from the audience here. We got Aaron Zen, another amazing creator of Wesley the Robot. He's asking, how did you meet Alexis Zirit and how did you come to work together?
Yeah, Alexis has been one of my best friends for probably 10 years now.
He did this can.
He did that can? Sorry.
I think he did the art for Liquid Death, didn't he?
Well, he ended up working. So the Liquid Death can is not Alexis, but it looks exactly like him. Like whoever drew that clearly likes it, and they did hire him to do some other stuff. But
okay, that's where I was mistaken. Sorry.
Yeah. I think you will see. I do think that there's like a box somewhere with his art on it. But you're totally right. It looks like Alexis's work, except Alexis uses like a brush pen. So that one has a very like clean digital line. But yeah, so Alexis, we had this. Well, first I knew him online. This website DeviantArt used to be really popular for just posting artwork. Cool artists, and so I had been a fan of Alexis's on DeviantArt for a long time, and then I saw him join up with an art rep, and I reached out to the art rep and was just like, hey, if you're looking for artists or whatever, like consider me. And maybe a year later, that guy came back around and was like, hey, I'd love to represent you. And at the time, that was Out of Step Arts. And so that guy, Neil Bramlett, he was representing Alexis and Toby Cypress, who was also one of my, all-time favorite artists. And then he asked me to join the group. And so we started doing shows. And so I knew Alexis online just from, I don't know, chit chat and whatnot. But but yeah, then we just started doing conventions together for like the last 10 years. You know, he's one of my best friends.
Nice. Yeah, he's a great dude. Great artist too. Amazing. All right, we are going to go over to Adam Lemna now, who has his hand up. What up, Adam?
Hey, really nice to meet you. Sort of again.
Yeah.
We met at LA Comic Con briefly, but yeah, man. My question, I'm gonna take it in a slightly different direction. When I read Head Lopper, it has like such an awesome rhythm and flow to it. And it makes me think every time I read it, it makes me think of music. And so I'm really curious how music figures into your process, and then if it figures into your process at all, and then also like taking it back to the kaiju, which we've been talking about, like what have you been listening to when you work on that kind of stuff?
Nice.
Yeah, music definitely figures into Head Lopper. It's a huge part of it. Like when I started out, I knew I wanted to make a like fast-paced, violent fantasy. Um, and but just kind of just fun, like not very serious. And I also the other goal was that it would be, you know, the most heavy metal comic that had nothing to do with music. Like I wanted you to be a metal fan and read it and be like, this is metal as fuck, even though no one picks up a guitar or anything. Um, and so yeah, so from the get-go, I don't do this as much as I used to since I've been making Headlopper so long, but I used to plot out the fight scenes like with listening to metal like really loud. And I was just like, what like if it was set to this speed, you know, what would be this fight scene? That's why I feel like in the beginning, Norgal was doing a lot of running while he was fighting, you know. But yeah, so it's all heavy metal has always been right there in its DNA. And
Awesome.
still there's that usually changes what I'm listening to if I'm drawing Headlopper. Probably my favorite band and very, you know, fits the fantasy heavy metal thing very well is Symphony X. They're
Right on.
fantastic, kind of neoclassical power metal, prog metal kind of thing. So I still listen to them all the time. But I have a very specific thing I listen to when I write, and I think it's just I can't listen to music with am I paused?
No.
Oh, okay. Um yeah, so I always listen to this soundtrack. There's this great manga called by Taiyo Matsumoto called Tekken Kincrete, and the anime is amazing, and this electronic band Plaid did the soundtrack for it, and it's bizarre and it's really abstract and always makes my brain feel a little bit loopy. So when I'm, you know, it's one of those things that you just kind of like it just drones a little bit. You feel stoned listening to it. And so I almost always listen to that soundtrack if I'm writing basically anything. It just puts me in this kind of like zenned out headspace where I feel like I feel a little bit more open to taking just like random wild ideas that are coming in. I'm just more likely to kind of like get in that little headspace and feel comfortable there for any kind of writing, whether it's Headlopper or, you know, Snarlagon or anything. I think I've been listening to that I did since I did Apocalyptic Girl at Dark Horse, which was 2013 or something. So that same record for like, you know, 10 years now. Yeah.
It's been with you, so it's become
Yeah.
like a part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I can't listen to anything else now if I'm writing.
Super cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Oh yeah, thanks, Adam. All right, we're going over to Mitchell Coleman. He's got a question. I'm at the end, dude.
All right. If it's personal, you don't have to say it, but obviously he's no longer with us. Drew Ford asked you to do a pinup for Airboy. What was the situation with that? Did that like lead to anything, or what happened? Because I definitely remember a Kickstarter of Airboy with you doing a pinup on that book.
Yeah, yeah, there's a little bit of a story there. I would rather not get into it if that's all right. It's just like
That's totally fine. If you don't want to answer,
it's
I totally understand.
yeah. Sleeping dogs lie. No big deal though. And Drew, and it was I got no beef with Drew. Drew was awesome. He like totally understood and everything.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I'll let it go for that.
Okay, yeah,
that-
sorry.
that-
And I
sorry.
appreciate you
Fine,
understanding too.
What about your question from the chat, Mitchell? Do you want to ask that one?
No.
Get you on the flip.
I gotta do something really quick.
right, dude.
Let Morgan go first. All right.
All right, man. Thanks again, Mitch. All right, we got Morgan Heron coming in here. Oh, where'd he go?
I'm right here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let's...
Hey, Mr. MacLean. I'm a big fan. We met last year at Heroes.
Yeah, that's right.
I bought Apocalyptic Girl from you, and I read it immediately when I got home. Loved it. We talked briefly, and you said that like one of the inspirations for it was like Akira. But what really sparked the genesis of this book?
The apps, like most of my stories usually start with a drawing. I'm like kind of an artist first and a writer second, and my stories are usually built out of things that I'm like, oh, what are things I want to draw or whatever. And so like HEAD LOPPER, Apocalyptic Girl started with one drawing, and the drawing was I had mentioned that that art group I was a part of, Out of Step Arts, and like I mentioned, my friend and huge fan of to this day, Toby Cypress. We did some collaboration prints, and so I did a collaboration print with Toby, and he was at the time he was drawing a lot of like motorcycles and futuristic girls and everything. So I was like, so he drew this like cool motorcycle girl, and I drew this cool futuristic motorcycle girl, and mine was kind of inspired by like Amy Winehouse and like a kind of this like goofy futuristic scooter, and there was like some cats and stuff, and that's where it started from this one drawing. Is just being like, all right, if there was a futuristic girl who rides motorcycles and hangs out with cats, what is that story? And so I had a little bit of an idea of what that story might be. So I mean, I was reading Akira around that time, probably. And I had seen that Tekken Concrete, anime, and read that book recently. So, Tekken Concrete and Akira were really in my head while I was doing some work at Dark Horse. And so Dark Horse pitched me basically a format. They were like, oh, we might be able to greenlight a project if it was a really cheap project. So like it's like print it like 6x9, do it in black and white. And I had done the first issue of HEAD LOPPER, and so they're like, oh, if you want to keep doing HEAD LOPPER in this format, that's totally cool. But I knew the HEAD LOPPER was way too long to fit this like 100-page format they were pitching me. So I just had this character, Apocalyptic Girl, sitting there without like a true story. And so when they said 100 pages, and Arya and her cat Jelly Beans didn't have a story yet, I was like, I'll make it 100 pages. I just lied. I was like, I've got a 100-page story. I've got a 100-page story ready to go. And I just knew that there was so little that I'd figured out for these characters. I would just wing it. I would just pitch them something, and whatever this idea was, I was going to conform it to 100 pages. And so that's where I started. Is I didn't want to lose that green light that they were giving me, because HEAD LOPPER wasn't the right fit for it. So I was just shooting from the hip. I was like, let's do it. Let's come up with post-apocalyptic, future girl with a cat and motorcycle.
And then what prompted the I guess it'd be the epilogue sequences, because it's more in your current style. So what prompted those two short stories? Because like I love the main story of Apocalyptic Girl, but those smaller little moments at the end I actually liked even more, which I thought was pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed returning to it. So it originally came out in 2015 as a 6x9 soft cover, and a number of years later they're like, hey, people still read this book, what do you think about doing a second edition hardcover? And I was like, yeah, sounds great. Like, I'd love to do that. Let's make it full size, so it's something a little special. And there are some collector types out there. This is an old habit, I guess I have. There's some collector types out there who will buy every version of the book that you make or
Yeah.
something. So I always feel like for those people, I've got to give them something extra if they've bought 2 copies, of the same story. And so I was like, all right, when Dark Horse was like, let's do the hardcover, I was like, well, why don't I take a crack at some new content for the back? But it was really fun. I really wanted to draw that world again, so that made me want to do an epilogue. But I also wanted to, look at, show you a little bit of where I pictured Arya coming from, beforehand, but also like where she might go. So that's why I did kind of a story that's an epilogue and one's a prologue.
Yeah, we get to see her mom and her
Yeah,
kind of
give me an
reminisce on
idea of
that.
what direction a new adventure might go in for, kind of thing.
It made me appreciate her better, for sure. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I've got some ideas of where stories could go for her for other volumes. It's just you gotta, pick your battles, and I've just been kind of enjoying drawing Head Lopper for a while. So
Yeah. And that kind of leads me to like some headlopper questions. Like, you've been posting some really cool and gnarly stuff on your Instagram stories.
Yep.
Is it safe to assume that you are currently drawing volume 5?
sort of. So yeah, I'm leading up to it. So I'm drawing right now I'm drawing an Agatha comic. So I'm drawing a prequel Agatha comic where we'll meet someone, we'll meet another witch that will then meet later in Head Lopper. So it's a story that works as a standalone Agatha story. But it'll also add context, to people who have read like all of the Head Lopper comics. So I'm doing that right now as I work on the volume 5, like writing and everything. I've got it all plotted out. I'm just kind of moving some pieces around. So so doing an Agatha comic kind of for fun, and then working on volume 5 of Head Lopper at the same time.
Is that Agatha comic going to be like a single issue, or is it going to be a free comic book day kind of thing? Like,
I think it's going to be a single issue. It does feel like it opens up so much more story for her. So I think I'm going to leave it where it is for now, and then maybe return to it later, because it feels like it's a cool little tale, but it also feels like it could open up so much more independent Agatha adventure. So yeah, I'm not sure when it's going to be released yet. I'm probably halfway through drawing it right now. I'm figuring out the publishing stuff, but I know I wanted, because volume 5 will take so long before it starts hitting shelves, I wanted there to be a shorter comic, from the Head Lopper world that people could pick up while they wait, basically.
yeah. And is Jordi Belair coming back on colors for any of those projects?
That's a plan.
Great questions.
Yeah, I hope so. I haven't talked to her in a minute. I'm gonna
She's
call
fantastic.
it Agatha comic because it's really short. But yeah, I'll be very sad if she doesn't come back on volume 5. But that's the plan, certainly.
And I just got like one last question, and I'll leave you alone, sir. So the back cover of Snarlagon, that Saturn there, did you eyeball the gradient for it, or did you use templates to stipple that?
Well, it's like, so yeah, so I worked out some techniques for gradients on stippling, and it's kind of like, it probably works in other areas where you're trying to make a gradient, but I'll break it into very simple. I'll make it simple and then blend it. So basically, like for the gradients on stippling, I would make like 2 fields that are basically like even, right? So say one is like a real middle tone, and then underneath it there's a real dark tone. Well, when I first put in my stippling, there's a very clear line of where the dark and the medium and the dark meet. There's a very clear line. So after I've got that in and it feels very natural, then I'll go in and make the gradient. And at that point, where if you put in a nice base of of a gray tone, kind of half-tone feeling, the gradient will feel very natural. You can do it kind of randomly. I feel like the key is to first make it separated and then blend it. But yeah. And you can I'll draw little guides too. So like if I'm gonna do say stippling, or I'm gonna do like a wash or any kind of shadow work, even if I'm gonna do anything that you're trying to do that is like emulates gray. So even if I'm doing like cross hatching or something, I will sometimes make a guideline of the shape of a shadow or something. So like just so like I'll be like, all right, the shadow's kind of like this shape, and then I'll cross hatch it in, or you know, put the stippling in there. And so the end result after you erase the pencil looks very clean and very intentional, but you know, you set up little road markers for yourself to follow all along the way and took it like step by step, if that makes sense.
I believe so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, Morgan. Great questions, dude.
Yeah, man.
Alrighty, so we're off to Anthony. What's up, dude?
Yo, how are you guys?
Good, good.
So Andrew, other than the Dead Lawyer book that I just picked up, I'm actually rereading Head Lopper, the whole thing. And one of the things that I notice is, and Morgan kind of brought it up with the colors, that seems to be like pretty much the only thing you don't do. So is it because is it like a speed thing? Because I know for me, colors A takes forever, and B is, to me, just laborious as shit and just not quite as exciting as the actual drawing or the layouts, or anything along those lines. So yeah, what's your thought process, or what brought you to the point where you decided to bring someone else in?
Yeah. Well, when I was working at Dark Horse and they're trying to do it, you know, kind of as easily as possible, because they were taking a risk on like a new guy.
Sure.
I volunteered to do the colors because they didn't want to hire a colorist. And it took me months. Like it took me so long. I
That
also
makes me feel a little bit better.
I find it laborious too. I like it. I like, you know, bringing an image to its completion, but it takes me forever. So yeah. So that's, you know, time is the major reason. I have a colorist on there. But you know, and also a big part of why so many of the other tasks I do in house is really a you know, a practical thing. I mean, first of all, things like book design or lettering and things, I don't mind those. I like those tasks. I like just making stuff. But beyond that, you know, there's only so much money that, you know, you can expect from selling a comic book. And when I see, you know, an Image title out there, and so for people who don't know, Image, isn't really super like other creator-owned publishers, where you basically run your own project. You're the boss. Like if you want an editor on it, you hire them. If you want a colorist, you hire them yourself. And Image just takes your files and prints them. Other publishers that kind of hold your hand through the whole process. And they give you an editor, they can give you a colorist and all these things, but Image is very hands-off. Like it's your book, you run that like a business. So when I see an Image book that has like 6 names on the cover, I'm like, someone is voluntarily putting 6 different people on this book and splitting, you know, the money they make from it, you know, six different ways.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked on, you know, comics before that I literally didn't make a cent. You know what I mean? And for every other person that you put on a project, as much as it's great to like hand out jobs and things, every person that you put on there is you know, is cutting more and more into that money. So for me on Head Lopper, it's really beneficial to have Jordy on there and then have the rest of the jobs be myself or my wife Erin. She edits it. We tag team the letters and the design stuff. But yeah, it just goes a long way. The more you can do yourself, kind of the easier it is, or the more likely you'll be able to make ends meet.
Yeah, I mean, every book that I pretty much do everything myself, and I like doing everything myself. It's just the color specifically. It just like, woof,
Oh, yeah.
this slows everything down so much. I had one other thing for you, and you kind of mentioned it, and that is for the lettering. So, I've noticed is like the letters either. I mean, they really can kill a book, no matter how good the story is. They could just murder a book. And on the other hand, they could just fit so perfectly that it like you're reading it, but it's like they're not even there.
Mm.
And your lettering in all the books that I've read that you've made, even like the was it the one off of ball fondlers? Yeah, totally kind of out of left field, but it just fits very well. So my question to you is I mean it's something that I'm trying to like work on constantly. Like I've made my own font of my handwriting, but it like doesn't, it's just like not the same. And now for the book I'm working on now, I'm like actually writing every single one. So did you make your own font, or is it something that you actually like laboriously rewrite every letter for every word, Bob?
When I first started making comics, I hand lettered everything. I liked the idea that the original page had all of the, all the stuff on there. I like that
Yeah.
the original page looked like the final product. But it was, adding, like 4 hours per page or something, I realized.
Yeah, that's time for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot. And also at that point you're just committing to your dialogue. There's no editing it without,
Yeah.
tons of work. So I eventually moved to a font. I looked into getting a font made, but it fell through. And then I found this font that I just thought was close enough to my handwriting anyways. So I went with that font and I've stayed with it ever since. But I think the other thing that I do that is helpful is that I draw while I type in the dialogue, I draw the balloons. So I got pretty used to like balloon sizes when I was hand lettering and everything, but a rule I keep for myself is that I'll draw the balloon in the pencil stage, how big I think it's going to be, and then I'll add like an extra quarter of an inch around that. So like I always make them like I always shoot to make them bigger than needed. And I think just then I can consider that shape of the speech balloon in with the composition of the art. It saves me time because now I'm not like, it would drive me nuts if someone else was lettering that I would spend all this time drawing something, and laboring over it. And then there'd be a balloon would cover it. And like the composition would get wonky. So eventually I was just like, look, just draw in the balloons and type in the dialogue. And sometimes it doesn't fit. It is like I wrote way too much dialogue, then it'll fit in the balloon. But I'm the writer too, so I can edit it. And I'm like, all right, what did I actually need to say? Like get this stuff out. And then usually that's when I just cut. Like I was just reading a lettering sample um from an upcoming issue of Godzilla, and I was looking at it and I was like, look how much freaking dialogue I wrote here. Like I didn't need, like, once you actually see how much you write, sometimes you realize you're like, I did not need to take up that much space on a page with what I'm saying. And it's usually, it's because IDW hires a letterer, but when I do it myself, that's the stage at which I'm like, all right, just cut half of this out,
All right, well that's yeah, you kind of answered my next question then. That's perfect. Yeah, because the thought of pre-making the balloon and then not filling it up would give me anxiety. So like I lay everything out and I put like where I think they're gonna, where they'll fit.
Yeah.
But then I still draw everything and then I put them in after the fact so that like I know where they are, but
Yep.
like I'm not gonna overdraw, but on the other, and then on the other hand, coloring it will save me a little bit. Yeah, that feels ballsy to me. But if you're comfortable editing,
Yeah, and
then
the other thing
like
is, for
whatever.
me, The other thing is for me is I'd like a word balloon that has a lot of breathing room around the text. Like
Yeah.
when the balloon is really hugging the text, it's like your eye doesn't have anywhere to rest. I much prefer, I always attribute it to like manga since it's translated. Um, there's often, there's often, a translated manga that it feels like there's a lot of breathing room around that dialogue, and I found that I just really like it. I find it like almost relaxing, so I always tell myself that if I draw a word balloon like way too big, I'm just like, screw it, like I don't care, like that's
Yeah.
fine. I'd rather it be have a lot of empty space than have it really cramped,
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Anthony. Alrighty, we got a question from the Facebook chat here. This one's from Shane Berryhill. He says he loves your work. Have you ever worked out any heartaches or etc. on the page? If you're okay answering, would you mind elaborating?
hard eggs. I have heard, some people think that uh you know that your work should be like a cathartic, or like that's where art should come from, or it should be like an exorcism or something. I don't think I usually work that way. Right. Usually I think that I'm kind of maybe a more shallow writer, where I'm trying to just want like adventures. I want the adventures to not to have like cost. Like if I put characters through, you know, through a tough time, I want them to walk away with emotional scars, but I don't usually, exercise my demons on the page. That said though, I mean, I think Godzilla is where it's so much about, parenting, and it's about kind of like, the underlying, it's about monsters, but like the underlying themes are like, like generational trauma and things like that. So I think there's, parts of, of me get worked out on the page in a way. So like, there's something that can be said about my family life, through my Godzilla story, or even like the way the deities and things are structured in Headlopper kind of mimics my, own, lack of spiritual beliefs in a way, like, if there's a god of Headlopper, it's death. It's not anything with any kind of moral standing. It's just this very absolute state. So I think certain personal things find themselves in there, but mostly I try to make kind of escapist work. Um, if I want it to be relatable, I want characters to have natural, reactions and emotions, but mostly I'm just trying to get him to do cool things, kill cool monsters.
Well, that's kind of it's like that double-edged sword, or the
Yeah.
snake that eats its own tail, because if we didn't have the comics to exercise those demons, would those demons be stronger? So then it's like,
Yeah, it's
maybe
kind of
we're
a
not consciously.
I'd be squirming. Yeah, if I didn't have something to give my attention to, I'd be, yeah,
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Word. All right, so we're going over to Caetano Venezuela. He's got a question here for you. What's up, man? Unmute yourself. There you go.
Hey, dude.
Dude.
Name's Gaetano. Good to meet you. I just had a couple quick questions. Number one, like when you're thinking about story, are there other types of media that you're consuming to like kind of learn about story structure and think about story structure? Like I think a lot about like how like movies and like directors and stuff and how they think about story structure. And so like I don't know, is that something that you do as well, short stories or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely read more like novels now than I do read comics. I think that in my opinion, I think it's kind of like, in a way, the kind of the clearest like storytelling medium, because it comes from like just one perspective. You can't really lose your audience, like, and you have a in a comic you have both words and images, and together you're creating a story. But in a novel you have just words. It's singular point of view. If they want you to see something, they describe it. So I do think a lot. I do, think a lot about storytelling through, through that lens and through film. I feel like I rarely actually really think about comics when I think about storytelling, formula or technique or anything like that, to be honest.
Right.
But I would say the other part is if I'm writing something for myself, my story structure gets dictated to a lot by the medium. So like say like for comics, I'm like, how many issues is it? And I know that say like in HEAD LOPPER, it's always 4 issues per, trade paperback. So I'm like, all right, I'm telling one story that's going to have, 4 episodes. So each issue, my starting point for every HEAD LOPPER volume is each volume needs to have like a big tentpole action scene. Each issue needs to have a big monster. Each issue needs something to get its head cut off, and so that's where I start. And so I'm really starting from kind of a visual standpoint, like what are the 4 major things that I want these characters to do or conquer. And so the story becomes this held up right away before I have any ideas by having specifically 4 big moments. And so I start, because each issue has to be not just like cool to look at. Like each one should have the same parts. So each issue should have some action. You should learn something about the plot. You should move the plot ball, the story ball down the road. And so kind of like making these, I'll think of things, I'll ask myself like, what's important? What do you need to walk away with? What do you need to learn? And then that becomes kind of the focus is like, in this issue, we need to motivate why these characters will go on an adventure. All right, issue 2. In this issue, now I need to really make them realize they're stuck in the adventure. And then issue 3, now I really need to get another piece of adventure that'll get us teed up for, issue 4. And then issue 4, which is the final issue, always like, what is that big moment and what did we learn, at the end? And so before I've got ideas, I'm already kind of building a structure based on that like 4 issue model. And so if I'm doing, so like for Godzilla, we did 5 issues, I was doing the same thing. But I'm also telling myself things like, all right, by issue 3, we're dead center. So the back half should be really action packed. The back half should be feel really quick. And so, I start there and then I write to hit those little benchmark goals.
Right on.
Then.
Cool. And then, okay, so then I have another question, completely different kind of question. When you like do like all the like clothing stuff and merchandising and stuff, do you keep those things separate from your business as a comic book artist? Like are they sort of siloed, like business wise, like, or are they sort of like under one umbrella and just kind of going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely started with every intention of keeping them very separate. The idea was like, all right, like if my brand Laser Wolf Attack, catches on with some kind of following, it'll be its totally independent thing that stands alone, outside of comics. And that's where I started. But then honestly, it got a little off track during COVID, just because stores weren't open anymore and neither were conventions. And so all of a sudden I felt like there wasn't really any way for people to get my comic books. And so where I'd spent this time making this online store for apparel and things, I was like, well, I've got to find a way to sell more comics too. So I brought more of my comics work onto the web store and really kind of mixed what felt like 2 separate like brands.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a question right now, just like, all right, should I pull them back apart? Like I'm at a place where I'm just like, all right, what am I gonna, I know like for me, I want to do a bunch more HEAD LOPPER, but I've now mixed HEAD LOPPER in with, I don't know. Point is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, because I do conventions as well. Like,
Yeah.
well, I do like craft shows. I sell like paintings
Yeah.
and like hand painted signs, but I also do comics, and I've sort of like the
Mhm.
worlds have sort of collided because like
Yeah.
I'm selling them and people look for my comics at my craft show table, and then like and online I kind of have them separate, but I'm like, does that make any sense?
I
Should they
know.
be together? You know what I mean? Like, because
I
they are
think so.
different. You know, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a like necessarily a wrong answer, but I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm asking myself that same question. Like, it's not COVID anymore. Should I pull the brands apart? Because now it just feels like this weird mishmash of yeah, like exactly like what you're saying. Is it arts and craft show or is it comic book convention?
Right on. And then last question, what's your favorite convention and why?
That's that's pretty tough. I mean, I like a few for different reasons. So I love Heroes Con. It's always like really an amazing just hang out with amazing comic creators. I love like SPX and TCAF because there's so many cool creators that draw on all these art styles that I don't that are rare. Each one is unique and they're all in the same place. And the talent level is just so high.
Right
And
on.
you're probably gonna find your next favorite comic that you hadn't even heard of, you know. But my probably my most the show that's most fun for me is probably Designer Con. It's not a comic art show. So everything there always hits me with such surprise. It's really colorful. I love, designer toys, and it's a big show for kaiju. And so I always walk out of there super inspired. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of good ones. There's so many now.
Cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Hell yeah, thanks, Gaetano. All righty, so we're gonna go back to Mr. Adam Lemna here. Morgan's running off on me here. I'm calling people Mister. Oh, jeez. I'm kidding. All right, Adam, here you go, bud.
Hey man, one of the things that you said earlier that sort of stuck with me through the whole time that we've been talking here is that when you were starting out, one of the things that you did was try and choose stories that you could use in order to like develop your skills as an artist and work on different things. What are the things that you're working on right now? And like, how did that affect, like you mentioned how it affected your style, but like, how did that affect your process, all that sort of thing?
Yeah, I feel like I've always got something that I'm like working
Totally.
on, some kind of technique. And it always affects my style and not necessarily in ways I expect. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I really want to work on this thing, and all of a sudden I notice every page is taking 3 hours longer, and I'm just like I want to develop this skill, but should I really be incorporating it? So I feel like after I read, I mentioned Miyazaki's Nausicaa. The first time I read it was a number of years ago, and I'm just blown away by how amazing his lighting is in it. And at the time, I really didn't do squat for any of that kind of like subtle lighting. I didn't do any like cross hatching or anything. It was my artwork was pretty clean at the time, and I just felt like lighting was not very subtle in HEAD LOPPER. Jordy does these amazing limited palettes, and I was doing these areas of like big spot blacks, and there wasn't much between. It was kind of like black or white. And so for a long time, I was just working on how to crosshatch like manga, basically. So I like old manga, like 70s manga, and they'll just be these amazing just fields of cross hatching, taking this very cartoon, like the character will be drawn very cartoony and like kind of sloppy, and the background is rendered so beautifully in cross hatching that it's almost like a cartoon on top of like a photograph or something. Like, and I thought that effect was so cool. So for years I was really working on cross hatching, and I kind of like where I've got it now, but I also feel like it's sometimes you gotta like rein it in a little bit, right? So like if I want to learn a skill, I'm putting it on everything. And so right now, actually, I'm really focusing on just being minimal. Like I'm really trying to pull back on the cross hatching. So like in the Agatha comic I'm drawing right now, it's basically no cross hatching. But when I color it, I'm gonna put in like a secondary shadow. So like that, so it'll be almost like a little bit of a digital painting aspect to it. You know, I try to set rules for myself. I do think that, you know, limitations sometimes breeds like creative problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And so sometimes it's what I'm working on is like telling myself not to do something or do less of. So there's no cross hatching, but there's a layer of shadow in colors. Because I like where I feel like I have a okay handle on cross hatching, or I like where it's at right now. But I want to decide before I jump into volume 5, like, do I want to pull it all the way back to this Agatha comic level where I'm going to go back to more like volume 2, you know, almost like a volume 2 art style where it's not much hatching, it's just like lines and spot blacks, or do I want to commit and do volume 5 in cross hatching? I don't know. This is all the shit that we overthink
Super cool, man.
all
Yeah,
day.
no, I love hearing this because it's like
Yeah.
it makes so much sense because like I mean one of the reasons that I started doing my book Relic Hunter was because I wanted to get better at like figure drawing. And
Yeah.
so like drawing barbarians, you know, like there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like that, so I totally connect with that idea and I really love that you're constantly like finding something to like either like affect the way that you're going to make something or like build your skills. That's really cool, man. Really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. I like to experiment. I do think that there's always, you know, something you can work on, and I'm always discovering new things that I like. You know, like when I was younger, I didn't care about painting like at all, but now I love painting. So I can feel the effects of, you know, enjoying actually doing painting and enjoying looking at painting in the way I draw, you know, like
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, you could pick up all kinds of stuff. I remember, I don't want to misquote him, but if I remember, I think Tradmore was looking at like a lot of sculpture when he was drawing, Silver Surfer Black, and like a lot of the, you know, the twisting that he started to do and the stretching of shapes and form, you know, were inspired by looking at a lot of, you know, sculpture. And I do think that's, you know, an interesting thing. It's like
Yeah,
trying to
totally.
incorporate some
Yeah.
new skill or explore something. And I always
Right.
feel like, you know, if you are one of those artists that you try to maintain this consistency of style, then you could not leave yourself any room to grow or develop
Right.
or learn something new. And so I try to let myself just explore and hope I don't really push the limits too much. Because you can look at any volume of HEAD LOPPER, and I feel like the art style changes a bit from the beginning to the end because there's
I kind of love it though when somebody like really takes a chance, even if it doesn't work. You know what I mean?
do
There's
too,
something
yeah.
really to be said about like trying something that you've never tried before.
Yeah.
You know? Totally, man. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, dude.
All right, sweet. We're gonna go back to Manny Gomez, one of our hosts. He's got a few more cues for Andrew to
I
add.
wanted to take it back to talking a little bit about your writing process because you know you obviously write for yourself, and with Godzilla you've written for other artists. So like, is there a difference in approach to each project? Like, do you work from a full script for either? Like,
I write
how
it's pretty similar. I write a full script for myself. Like the HEAD LOPPER scripts I could really hand to somebody else and they could draw it. It's just where I worked with other writers first. When I started to write for myself, for some reason I just mimicked the product that I was receiving. So I started to immediately write for myself the way, you know, other writers were writing for me. And so they're really, no, I don't think so. I think it's pretty much the same. I do try to be conscious of, you know, those moments that there might be something that I am aware of that now I need to tell the artist. So I feel like there's little things that I'm picking up, you know, where I'm doing more and more writing for other artists. And so when I get like Jake recently was just like, oh, I really like it when you do this type of thing. I find that really helpful in the Godzilla scripts. I'm like, oh, all right, because I don't know, it's you don't know what's really helping because again, like I've where I write for myself, usually it's kind of like working in a vacuum. If it works for me, I don't have to
Right.
change
Yeah.
it. Like, so I feel like I'm still testing the waters, and for the most part though, it's worked out. I've just noticed that the only difference might be that I'll put little notes or something if I'm writing for someone else. It might be just like note like I'm gonna incorporate this knife in a couple pages. So this might be a good place to plant the knife on your character or something like that. Um, so I do little things like that, little pointers like, oh, you know, go bonkers right here. This is a good place to draw as big as you
Nice.
can. This is a good place to like, you know, flex. This is a good place to draw a cool fucking thing. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I'm kind of used to writing a pretty detailed script.
And then the other quick question I had, we've talked about Jordi Belair a couple of times tonight. She's one of my favorite colorists, and I feel like she colors like 20 books a month. It seems, like, what was there a specific work of hers that made you be like, yeah, I want her to color Head Lopper? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. I can't remember what book first got my attention, but I also one of the things I really loved was um her around the time uh that I hired her, I was in love with her Tumblr account. She would do these great things where she would kind of post panels that she had done and separate what the palette was.
nice.
She would do these studies of even often live action movies and like take screenshots, and she would again separate the palette from like just a beautifully shot film, and she'd be like, this is the palette from this frame or whatever. And I always thought that everything that she was doing and how she was thinking about it was just always so beautiful, and just such a wide range of just pretty palettes. And I thought her ability to just kind of like break things down into and simplify them was just fantastic. But then getting to work with her, I ended up learning how much she's really bringing to the page in terms of actual storytelling, where she'll kind of, she'll build up to moments using color. And I didn't notice this at first until she pointed it out. There was a scene in Head Lopper Volume 2 where it's really psychedelic and weird. And I wanted the colors to really separate from this other scene that was happening parallel to it. And I had just said, like, I'm picturing this. I don't really usually give her notes, but this time I did. I was like, I'm picturing this scene being heavy in pinks and purples. And she's like, great. And then she hands things over. She's like, I don't know, what do you think? And I was like, I think it's great. I was picturing more pinks in there, but your purples are really nice. And she goes, no, 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 I'm saving the pinks. She's like, this scene has a crescendo, and as the
Oh,
scene develops, I'm putting more and more pinks in there. And when you read that scene, it's true. You starts out very, very purple, and then pinks start popping up here and there. And then as it's like a dream sequence, and it's really trippy. So like, she takes it to this place where the end is like intensely pink. And that's a way of coloring that I just really never thought of before, is using color to help you tell the story.
nice. Thank you, man. Yeah.
Word. Thanks, Manny. All right. We are winding down here. We've got some more time. We're going to go back over to Morgan Heron for some more questions. And then last chance for anyone else if they've got some questions, and then we'll end her out here. Thanks again, Andrew, so much.
Thanks for having me.
Morgan.
It's fun.
man. Hell yeah.
That scene you were just describing just then, was that the snow scene in volume 2? Because I remember that vividly, and I remember like the whites of like the snow and the monster pulling out like really struck me, especially compared because like in all the Headlopper books, the gutters are tan, which I think kind of creates like this almost like underpainting, so that like whites and bright yellows can just pop at you.
Yeah, I don't. I do remember the way she colored that snow scene with that character made out of bones, Bonehelm, was his name.
Yeah.
I do remember her coloring that really intensely, especially at the end where it kind of turns into a nightmare. But this scene in particular is, I think, from the following issue. So it would have been like the third issue in volume 2, and it's the characters Zanya and Twerple, one of the little Fonga guys.
Yeah.
They go into this it's totally trippy realm. There's like floating like rocks that they're like walking on stuff. And basically what happens in it is there's this creature, this like kind of like almost like an octopus creature. It draws out of them their like greatest fears, and it creates it in front of them like as like a hallucination and trying to get them to kill themselves basically. And yeah, so that's what it was. So in the beginning, when they're just walking through this dark dream space, it's like very black and purple. And as this world of, of fear basically materializes in front of their feet, it starts turning more and more pink.
Yeah. And the next question I have is kind of more art centric. You do a lot of original art, and I always love looking at everything you do, from like the commissions you do, original pages. Like I knew about Snarlagon from watching like the like little reels that you would do of you like doing stippling and pushing the paint around and whatnot. I was wondering, like, when did you connect with Felix from Felix Comic Art? When did that
I
happen?
think it was during COVID. Like I had said, I was part of Out of Step Arts, and this great guy Neil, who had been running for years, basically just because he loved comic books and wanted to be involved in some way. He had another full-time job and a whole other part of his life. This wasn't his like whole thing, and so eventually just like, I'm gonna wind this down and move on. And so yeah, and I had a handful of friends that were with Felix, and I thought he did a really great job. So yeah, that probably would have been, COVID sometime towards the end, maybe
Yeah.
2020, I don't remember, but it's been a
How's
few.
it, how's it been working with him? Because like I recently watched like, and this was like an old recording, but like he did a live stream with James Harren when Ultra Mega pages were being sold, and like how's working with him been?
Great. Felix is fantastic at his job. That's why I went with him. To me, it's clear, if you're gonna make anything your job, you almost like you have to like love it. You have to have a passion for it. You have to like be invested in it in a way that you can spend all of your energy on it. And Felix
Find like-minded people.
What's that?
Find like-minded people to help you along the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, absolutely. And so, what's great about Felix is this is his whole like life. This is his whole craft. I think he loves it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is collecting and selling, and he gets a kick out of it. And so he's really good at it.
And um, I do have this like more story kind of centric question, and it might be a little bit silly. So I hope I'm not going to offend you with this, but Uncle Scientist from Snarlagon, was he based off of Jeff Goldblum? Because like
Yeah,
he kind of looks like Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, he's Jeff Goldblum. Yeah.
I knew it. Oh my gosh. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
You made my night. That's all I needed to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't usually like literally cast, actors as my characters, but in that case, I definitely did. And though she doesn't really look at like her. I was picturing that character Grace, the other scientist, as Frances McDormand. I just thought like those two characters in that type of role, I just thought would be so awesome. I was like, this is like a Wes Anderson movie or something.
I was gonna say I could see him being in a what's it called, an apartments.com commercial.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. MacLean. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Before we end here, let's talk to Andrew a little bit about what he's got going on next, what he's got going on right now, where we can find you, and what Godzilla movie we should watch next.
Well, I'll start with that one. I think my favorite is probably Godzilla versus Hedorah. The English version is Godzilla versus Smog Monster. It's just so strange. It's like maybe early 70s. I can't remember exactly, but it's like really trippy. The monster is like this drippy this drippy creature like that like slimes everything, and it grows from like a larva into a full size thing. But also the movies as a movie is so strange. It has like little like snippets of bizarre animation in between cut scenes. There's like a disco scene. It's got to be the strangest, like trippiest of the Godzilla movies. If you haven't seen that one, it's a gem.
Nice.
Where you can find me. So I have all of my stuff available for sale on my website, laserwolfattack.com. All the Head Lopper stuff is on there. Snarlagon, Laserwolf Attack published Snarlagon, so that's the only place you can get it right now. It's in some stores, but not as widespread as like my Image books. Yes, that's it. Thank you, Eli. And so yeah, you can get Snarlagon there. You can get Apocalyptic Girl there. You can get Head Lopper there, or in your local comic book store or Barnes and Noble or something. For social media, I mostly use Instagram, so that's the best spot to like just keep an eye on what I'm up to. And then in the future, if you're a fan of Head Lopper, there's a ton more Head Lopper coming. I'm working on Volume 5 as well as a Agatha kind of spin-off comic. So Agatha's everyone's favorite character. So if you want to see a little bit of backstory on her while she still had legs and a body, this will be right up your alley.
Sweet. Hell yeah. Thank you so much. We might as well go around the horn since we got only creators up in the room. Real quickly, tell us where we can find you and what's your new book. So we'll start with Morgan up there, Mr. Heron, if you please.
Oh, you can always call me Morgan.
All right, fine.
Yeah. My book, or issue 1 of Frankie Boy Monster, is sold through cosmiclineproductions.com, and you can find me on Instagram at heron_art. That's where I will be posting panels from Frankie issue 1, and then all my stories. I've been posting my progress on issue 2, which is a work in progress, and it's gonna be bigger than issue 1. So if you're watching this and you've read issue 1, consider buying issue 2, because it's going to be bigger and better for sure. And I'm taking commissions for Indie Comics Creator Con, so hit me up on Instagram if you want a pre-con commission.
Nice. Good
Oh
call.
yeah.
All right, sweet. Let's go over to Rick.
I'm still Rick. I'm on Instagram at Doomdazed. Find my series Cosmic Cat on Next Panel Press, along a dozen other artists. I'm already almost into the 80s because I'll do a page every other Sunday, but you can read it all for free on our story highlights right now. And then still making my way, trying to sell all my issue 3s. I'm down to a couple left, but I'm gonna have issue 4 later on this year, and I'll have a bunch of new issue 3s for when I hit Connecticut in a month or so.
Yeah.
Find me on
that's
Instagram.
All right, at Doob Days.
Appreciate you, Andrew.
All right, Anthony, go for it, dude.
Hey, you can find me on Instagram _ATV3_. You can find links on there for the 3 books that I have done, which is Babies on a Plane, Silver Fox Golden Ops, and Checkers on the Beach. And then I have my book I'm working on now, Nut Jobs, which I hope to be done sometime later this year. So I will gladly share once that gets a little bit closer. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, man. Next go, or Manny, what up?
What up, man? You can find me on Instagram at _ I'd buy that for $1 _ I post a bunch of comic book stuff on there, lots of dollar bin kind of stuff. I'm on the Comic Lounge with Ryan Malcolm quite frequently, where we talk about some new issues, a lot of old collections and old comics. Like I said earlier, Adam and I are working on Relic Hunter issue 2, so that's going to drop in 2024. And like a lot of us, I'm going to be at IC3 on March 9th. So if you can make it out to that show, it's probably going to be the show of the year. I mean, I feel it's going to be great, and we're all going to have a great time, and it's going to be a great place to meet everybody. And I have a feeling a lot of projects are going to come out of that one too. So you know, that's what I got going on, and got my eyes set on IC3. So looking
Sweet.
forward to it.
It's gonna be great, man. What about you, Cayetano?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Cayetano Valenzuela. Also my website, Black Rabbit Studio. And then I do have a second Just Comic stuff on Instagram, which is Black Rabbit Comics. You can check out my issue 1, 2, and pre-order number 3 of Night Moves. And then you can also catch one of my short stories in the back of issue 266 of Savage Dragon.
Nice.
Sick, dude. All right, thanks so much, dude. And what about you, Adam?
You can find me at Adam Lemna on Instagram. This is my book, Relic Hunter. I'm working on issue 2 with Manny. And it should be out by Heroes. I have the cover of a poetry book that I told you guys about, and with that writer, I'm going to be working on a romance comic, which I'm really excited about because it's like some of my absolute favorite kinds of comics, and totally different than Relic Hunter. So it's going to be something really fun. Yeah.
Sweet.
Cool.
All right, sweet. And of course, Cosmic Lion Productions. As always, you can find us on our new Instagram, Cosmic Lion Productions, at Cosmic Lion Productions. My personal one, at Cosmic Lion. We'll continue. We've got the Grendel cast, The Devil in Detail. Find it wherever podcasts are found, or on my YouTube. Amazing interviews. We just had Matt on there to talk about the Masters Edition, and we have just great interviews with people going back. We got Joe Madden, we got Diana Schutz, and we got Tim Sale, and we got Pander Bros, all the best in Grendel. And Cosmic Lion Productions has a new 4-issue subscription model that we're working on. Hopefully going to be launched in February for a new book by Matt Howarth, who you might recognize from some great books from the 80s. This is a book he did in the 80s, or sorry, in the 90s, that remained unreleased. We've got 3 issues of that, and then a 4th all new issue that will come at the end of your 4-month subscription. So we're figuring that one out right now. This is the first kind I've dropped that subscription idea. So check out CosmicLionProductions.com. Always more coming. We got Wait It Gets Worse by Gideon Kendall and Doug Latino. That's in pre-order right now. The Big Bang Comics Anthology. And we just kind of signed a deal with Don Simpson to do a Megaton Man. Another Treasury edition of Megaton Man. So that's going to be insane.
Which I'll be doing pages for.
There you go, Morgan.
Nice.
Hit me up, Andrew, if you want to do a pinup or something. I think your style would be insane for that, dude. I'll hit you up. All right, y'all. Thank you all so much. New Comic Book Day Night Live reminds you not just to read more comics, but to be more
comics.
All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you again, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
And Morgan, you had a bunch of good questions.